Hey, it's Jessie from Squeegee Ink and welcome back to another episode of Printer's Corner. Printer's Corner is where I answer 3 of the questions you've given me this week in a little bit more detail, and I've taken those questions from all around social media. We also have a new community poll, so stick around to the end of the episode to see this week's results. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about the different mesh types for eco snap frames and whether you can use them on the roll. Then we're going to be thinking about whether it's worth it making your own screens, and thirdly, whether it's possible for CMYK inks to be discharge as well. If you have any questions for me that you'd like answered like this, don't forget to use hashtag Printers Corner in your question and I'll be sure to pick those up for a future episode. Our first question today was asked on a video that we made all about using eco snap frames, and these are basically metal frames. They come with these mesh panels and you use a tool and you self-tension your own screens in-house. And it was Ollie668 and they said, great video, you said that they only supply certain mesh sheets, but is it possible to use regular mesh in roll? And I don't think it is, Ollie, actually, because the mesh sheets that they provide have sewn in plastic panels, little strips on either side, and then those go into little grooves. So they are kind of a pre-made system and you do have to buy the mesh that they give you. And what I meant by they don't have all the different meshes is that, yeah, they don't have all 10 different mesh types, for example. They might have just picked the most popular ones and then supplied the mesh panels like that. I think it's the same story for roller frames as well. I think you have to do your own research, but I'm pretty sure the roller frames also have their specific meshes that have strips around them. There might be something quite useful that you might find interesting, is that we recently went round Screen Print World and they stretch screens in-house. So they'll take your old mesh off and put new mesh on. And I'd never seen that process in real life before, and I found it really interesting of how they actually get nice high tension mesh onto the screens. So watch that video, then you'll see what the process is like gluing down the static frames, and you might see that it's quite involved and you might want to, you know, get a pre-made screen or send it to somebody else to put the mesh on, because it might be more economical for you in the long run. Our second question today is from Exxon122 and they said, can I stretch a screen with staples and a wooden frame? What mesh should I use and will it work? Will it work and what mesh you should use? The mesh is going to be determined on what you're printing onto. So there's ones that are better suited for printing low detail on fabric, for example, like a 110, which is a 43, right the way up to, if you know you're printing onto paper, you might go for a 90T mesh. So that's the mesh choice. And then the second part of the question is it worth doing? And I don't think, in my opinion, it's worth getting all of the different supplies. Getting the frame, getting the staple gun, buying the mesh, which is around like the £7 a metre if you're just buying small quantities, it doesn't really equate to, like, it's not worth it. It's not worth your time and effort making a screen that isn't a professional standard. But I don't want to be coming off as like a bit mean. If you enjoy making screens and doing it all from scratch, or you happen to have some old frames that you want to put new mesh on with staples, then go ahead. That's completely fine and it's fun. And if you're doing a craft project where it's not that important that the print doesn't come out consistent and really precise, then go ahead and put the staples on the screen. But just know that you're not going to get a super high tension, and that's why professional printers and people who are printing for money tend to just get the screen, because getting just the screen for like a small little A4 project, for example, we went on a website and it was £20.95, which we believe is very, very comparable to getting all the supplies, including your time and everything, and making the screen. So I don't think it's worth it, but crack on if you find that a fun project to do. Just look up different craft-based websites then. So something like Crafty Screen in the UK, and I'm sure the US has craft-based websites where you can buy the pre-made screens and just get going on the printing side of it, which in my opinion is the most fun part of the printing process. Our third and final question for today is from Pack Zone Apparel, and this question is really interesting. They said, discharge ink possible for CMYK colour job? And unfortunately it isn't. That's a question I've asked myself to Magna Colours, who's an ink manufacturer, and I asked why is CMYK ink not possible for using on discharge jobs. Their answer was kind of like they can't control the variables. So if you're just printing with CMYK inks, they're supposed to be quite transparent and then blend together and then give you a range of colours. But really there's better technology out there now, and has been for quite a long time. I would basically step away from CMYK printing, which is quite limited. You have to just use specialty transparent inks, which are quite expensive. I would move on to something called Sim Process. And this is where you can use like a broader range of inks. They're not particularly transparent and they work together and give you a broader range of colours. They're more vivid. You can put underbases under them, you can put top whites. We've done some YouTube videos recently about how we're using Sim Process more regularly in the studio now. And there's lots of software out there, for example, Sep Studio NXT. And I'll put links in the description below, but you can use our discount code and get a free trial and that type of thing with that software. And it basically separates the image for you and uses very little skill. So I would go to Sim Process over CMYK, and there aren't such a thing as CMYK discharge inks that I know of.
Community poll.
Now it's time for this week's community poll, and if you'd like to be involved and cast your vote in the community poll, you simply need to go to our YouTube channel under the community tab, and there you can vote on all the different polls and let us know how you're doing your printing. This week's poll is all about what blank garments do you use, and the options were Stanley Stella, Gildan, AS Colour or another brand, and leave it in the comments which brands you're using. And I'm a little bit gutted to see the result, which is 65% of people are using Gildan as their blank supplier. I just think there's much better options available, but I'm a bit biased and I went for Stanley Stella personally. But you might be being asked that by your customers. Again, let me know in the comments why you're choosing Gildan over the other brands. And yeah, I'd be interested to know in a little bit more detail, because for one of the first times I'm actually opposed to what the majority are saying in our poll. But let me know why you choose them. Give us more questions in the comments using #PrintersCorner, and I'll pick those questions up for a future episode as well.